Hello, everyone. My name is Penny Serrurier. I am the co-office managing partner for the law firm Stoll Reeves. My law practice focuses on nonprofit law. I work with grant-making foundations and higher education organizations. I also serve on the board of the Oregon Business Council, which is my other fun job. And I'm proud to be the chair of OBC's Education and Workforce Committee. I want to give a quick shout out to the OBC staff, Kyle Ritchie-Knoll in particular. Many of you in the audience know Kyle and her work, and she's a rock star. It's a pleasure to be serving on the committee and working towards these important Oregon policy goals. The Education and Workforce Committee of OBC envisions a future in which all Oregonians, especially those whom our systems have underserved and marginalized, we envision a future where all Oregonians benefit from the transformational power of high-quality post-secondary education and training. We have 4 panelists today. They're all fabulous. I'm going to briefly introduce each of them one at a time, and then I will take a few minutes and ask each to tell his or her personal story, a little bit about their background and how they became so passionate about education and workforce training. Our first panelist is Jaime Arredondo. Jaime is a proud immigrant from Mexico. He is the chairman of PCUN, which is Oregon's farm worker union and one of the state's largest Latino organizations. Jaime also serves as the executive director of the CAPES Leadership Institute, which is a nonprofit organization working to build leadership of the Latino community. In addition, Jaime serves on multiple boards and councils. I was going to repeat them all, but I don't know how he has a job, actually. He is a trustee of the Collins Foundation, which is a fabulous foundation that many of you know of, which is doing important and innovative work in the state of Oregon. Jaime also serves on the Western Oregon University Board of Trustees. He serves on the EcoTrust Board and on Oregon's Youth Development Council. Jaime is a first-generation college student. He is a BA from Willamette University, and he's currently working towards his MBA at OSU. Go Beavs. Our next panelist is Patsy Richards. Patsy's a native of St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Patsy has 20-plus years of workforce development experience. She currently serves as the director for long-term care works at Rise Partnership. Before that, Patsy played a key role in developing and implementing the state of Alabama's apprenticeship program. Patsy serves on Oregon's Workforce and Talent Development Board, and she is also the co-chair of Governor Brown's Racial Justice Council Workforce Work Group, which focuses on investing in adult workforce education in order to connect all Oregonians to meaningful careers. Patsy has a bachelor's degree in management research and a master's in human resource management from Troy University. Our next panelist is Mark Mitsui. Many of you in the audience know Mark well. He has been the president of Portland Community College since 2016. Many of you also know that Mark is going to be retiring at the end of the academic year, which will be in June of 2020. He will be missed. Before joining PCC, Mark served as president of North Seattle College in Washington State, and he also served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community Colleges for the U.S. Department of Education in the Obama administration. When he was in Washington, he worked to advance President Obama's community college agenda through partnerships with numerous federal agencies and national stakeholders. Mark has been a consistent leader and champion of equitable student success. He also, like Patsy, serves on the Oregon Workforce and Talent Development Board and Governor Brown's Racial Justice Council Workforce Work Group. Mark has a BA from Western Washington and a master's in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies from the University of Washington. I won't say go dogs. Our final panelist is Andrew Nelson. He is the Randall C. Pape Chair in Entrepreneurship and Innovation and a professor of management at the University of Oregon. He also serves as the University of Oregon's Associate Vice President for Entrepreneurship and Innovation and as the Academic Director of the Lundquist Center for Entrepreneurship. Andrew is an award-winning professor, and he leads undergraduate, MBA, PhD, and executive education courses in entrepreneurship. Andrew's also an author. He's written 2 books, Technology Ventures and The Sound of Innovation. Andrew received his PhD in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford, where he subsequently served on the faculty. He also holds an MSc with distinction from Oxford and a BA with honors and distinction from Stanford undergrad. So now is the time where we're going to hear from our panelists, where they get to share their story. I'm going to start with Jaime. So will you tell the audience more about yourself and how you came to be sitting on this stage?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's an honor to serve in this space with my colleagues. It feels rare to be in a space like this in person and company, so I treasure that very much. I think, my journey really has to do with where I come from. As an immigrant from Mexico, growing up in a small village, really with no running water, no electricity, and no tomorrow, really. And it wasn't until my father came up north following the harvest in California and Oregon and Washington that he saw something else. He described it as a place where the trees can touch the sky, where there was an abundance of everything, prosperity, jobs, housing, education, you name it. And so he made the decision to bring us up north. And let me tell you something, we found out that prosperity was not for everyone, especially newcomers like ours. And it was a struggle, that first decade, the 90s, trying to learn how to speak a new language, trying to read and write at a 3rd grade level, the predictor to high school completion, trying to buy the blueberries that I picked and I couldn't afford them at the grocery store. It was a struggle, being undocumented for a decade and living under the shadows. But somehow, some way, our communities are resilient, they're upwardly mobile, and we figured it out. And today, I'm one of 5 kids in my family that has achieved post-secondary education. We're all serving this great state of Oregon. And so that's the path that still drives me today, thinking about where I come from and knowing that there is a tomorrow now.
Awesome. Patsy, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes. I tell my story today in honor of my mother, who actually passed in 2019, and she was an educator. And there's 2 things she always said to us coming up. She said, "What do you see, and how could you do it differently?" And being a child of an educator, I always saw my life through a different lens, because while other kids were playing, my mother was always, read this book, write this essay, did you finish your homework? I always felt like I was always behind the curve, like I never had a chance to play, I never had a childhood. And I remember early on in my young life, I ended up dropping out of high school. I ended up coming to the U.S. Not having my high school diploma. So I ended up going back to get my GED through a program called Project Genesis. And I remember this lady telling me, she said, Patsy, what do you want to do with your life? And when she asked me that story, my life was in a tailspin. And something like that, for most people, they would think is so simple. But when you're looking at your life in a tailspin, that's not simple. It's very complex. And for workforce development, for me, that set me on my path, because she helped me to come out of that tailspin and make some conscious decisions that put me on this stage today. And so for me, workforce development is my passion. How do we get people out of a tailspin? And how do we do it equitably? I had people send me letters when I just got a job to tell me come to an appointment. How do I tell a new employer that I have to go to DHR, which is DHS here, to come because I just got a job, and they're telling me they're reducing my benefits because I just got a 20-hour-a-week job. They didn't ask me what my hours were, but come to this appointment during these hours, regardless of what hours you work, and my employer is looking at me like I'm trying to flake, but I wasn't. How do we build these systems through the lens of equity? So I'm standing here today because somebody asked me a question: what do you want to do with your life? Because they saw me. And sometimes we need to take pauses and not rush to the next. And that lady allowed me to put the pieces, the fragmented pieces of my life back together. And I fell into workforce development because I went to this organization as a receptionist. And I was like, what do they do? And what were they doing? They were building programs to help people transition into work. Let me tell you my story through the lens of equity. I wanted to go to a training called Bridges Out of Poverty. And they would pay for the training. But in order for me to go to the training, I had to pay for the hotel, I had to pay for my meals, and the company would reimburse me. As a single parent, I could not afford it. Do you know how many trainings I went to that I slept in my car so I could get the training? And I'm here today. You want to talk about equity? You want to know why I'm passionate? Because the sacrifices I made, everybody didn't have to do the same thing to get here. So when I think about building these programs, I think about removing barriers so people can have access, real access.
Awesome. Fabulous. Mark.
It is an amazing privilege and pleasure to be on this stage with all three of you. Patsy, thank you so much, Jaime, for your stories, and Andrew, for what you will share. For me, when Melanie and I moved here from DC, I remember my mom calling, and she wanted to know where we were living, and I told her, and she said, well, can you see Jansen Beach from where you are? And I said, no, why do you ask? She said, well, we could. I said, wait a minute, when did you live in Portland? And she said, during the war. She and other Americans of Japanese ancestry, you had to have 1/16 quantum, to be picked up by the government and herded into prison camps. And the camp she landed in initially was here in Portland at the Livestock Expo. And they had a family of 9 and a horse stall. And she says, to this day, she can still smell the horse manure. But when they could go outside, she could go out and look through the barbed wire, and she saw Jansen Beach. I guess there was an amusement park there and roller coasters, and I think she was 12 at the time. But they couldn't go. 3 months later, she was transferred to Hart Mountain, Wyoming. And then after the war, she and her family were released. And she went to college. There she met my dad, who was there on the GI Bill. He had been held in Tule Lake and then joined the Army and went to college. Their journeys from American concentration camps to an American college campus changed the trajectory of their lives, and by extension mine as well. And I don't think I'd be on this stage here today if they hadn't done what they did. At the end of the conversation, Mom said, I guess our family went from being a prisoner in Portland to being a president in Portland in one generation.
Wow.
I just thought, yeah, Mom, that's amazing. And it, I think, speaks to the power, the transformative power of higher education. And that's what drew me to higher ed. It drew me to teach at a technical college starting over 30 years ago. In the community colleges, we take the top 100% of students. How many folks here have either attended a community college or know somebody that's been to a community college? Yeah. A lot of people get their start at the community colleges. We don't believe in a secular Calvinism where some people are predestined to failure and others are predestined for success. Everybody deserves a shot. Doesn't matter what zip code you're born into. Everybody deserves a shot. And that's been what has kept me in the community colleges, what drew me here in the first place. We serve students of color, the first in their families, to go to college. We serve students who speak languages other than English at home. We serve the veteran of 3 tours in Afghanistan marching toward a new purpose. We serve the dislocated worker, 55 years old, who's wondering whether or not they have a future at their age. We serve the victim of domestic violence, courageously looking for a new beginning for herself and her children. We serve the immigrant from Mexico or Kenya or Nepal pursuing their American dream. That's the power of higher ed. And it has been an honor and a privilege to have been part of it. Thank you.
Andrew.
Wow. Let me start by saying, Jaime, Patsy, Mark, it's truly an honor to sit up here with you and to hear you share your experiences. I'm from a town called Libby, Montana. I'm guessing none of you have heard of it. It's 2,600 people in the very northwest corner. A few of you. It's a logging and mining town. If you have heard of it, it may be because it's the largest EPA Superfund site in the country due to asbestosis tied to the mining activity. When I graduated from Libby High School, mostly people didn't go on to any sort of post-secondary education. They went to work at the mill, they went to work in the woods, they went to work in the mines, or they went into the military. I decided on a whim to apply to Stanford because I wanted to apply to one place so that I could frame the acceptance letter and say, I could have gone there. And the life-changing moment for me was that Stanford not only accepted me, they provided so much financial aid that it was less expensive to attend Stanford than the University of Montana. So I did. I went for 2 years. I then dropped out for a year because there's a lot of culture shock between Libby, Montana and Silicon Valley. I worked at McDonald's. I took some time to figure out my path, and I went back. And as you heard from that, I'm embarrassed to have that bio read. I've been very fortunate, and Stanford has treated me very well. I learned about entrepreneurship. I learned about technology commercialization. I met my wife, who went on to start a semiconductor materials company right here in Oregon. But I was always bothered by something, even as I was sitting on the faculty of Stanford, and that is that as incredible a university as that is, I did not see it as the model for the research university. It's too exclusive, it's too expensive, it's not tied to a place in the same way that our state universities are. So my wife and I were sitting around, and we'd done a road trip up through Oregon, and fell in love with the state. And we looked at each other and said, why don't we go somewhere where we can actually make a difference? And where the model of education is a university. I like this phrase that our provost has coined. It's not just the University of Oregon, it's the University for Oregon. And it has been truly an honor to devote my career to helping to build out this university. Something we get to a little bit later is the latest initiative at University of Oregon, the Phil and Penny Night Campus for Accelerating Scientific Impact. And I'm so excited about it because I think in many ways it represents a model for how we can do better as a university, how we can truly integrate our research activities and our teaching activities with social impact. The Night Campus mission, in a nutshell, is science advancing society. And I think the promise it has, the promise we have across all of higher education, is to impact society, to make it better. Yeah. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all, panelists. So we heard from Ben Cannon a few minutes ago, and he listed several priorities for Oregon in the area of education and workforce training. We're going to focus on two of them in our remaining minutes here on stage. Access. So how can the state create better access to higher education beyond high school? And workforce connection. How do we create pathways that meet employer needs? Both topics, of course, are related, but I want to just start with the access topic, and I want to start with you, Jaime. How would you could you describe for the audience why access to education is so critically important for our diverse and underserved communities?
Absolutely. I think, we got the census data, right? And it was very telling. Just some major, takeaways from that is the fact that 30% of Oregon's population is now people of color. Think about that. And if we go a little deeper there, out of the population of people of color, 40% of it is under the age of 18. I mean, you go a little bit deeper into K through 12, right? 4 out of 10 kids in K through 12 are ethnically diverse. Where is this going? Where is this going? And despite the growth that we've seen of these communities, unfortunately, we are overrepresented disproportionately in the wrong places. We see it in the criminal justice system, access to housing, access to health care, completion rates, dropout rates. Obviously, we felt it with the pandemic because we were essential workers, making sure to Oregonians meet their needs. But as my father, I go back to my father here, that's not who we are. That's not, our destiny. And I've lived that myself, especially in the Mid-Willamette Valley, one of the richest agricultural regions in this state, right? Where my father still today works the lands at the age of 60, 40 years in now, right? And I've seen, some of the things that have worked in this region, right? The fact that we have a community college that's a first Hispanic serving institution in the state, and one coming, Western University as well, the first, hopefully, 4-year institution to be a Hispanic serving institution. We now have representation in these communities from the city council to the school boards to state rep, and maybe even soon, Congressional District 6, thanks to the census. We have vibrant cultural community, a growing Latino middle class, businesses, across the region, right, that are providing the essentials to our communities. But the best is still yet to come, I believe. I have a daughter that just started kindergarten this past fall. She's coming in bicultural, into a dual language school. She's learning 2 languages, right? And when she graduates, about 15 years from now, more or less, she'll be part of the first class, potentially, of majority students of color. Where is she going to go? What is going to be her experience in higher education? Where is she going to go after that? What are the workforce opportunities that meet her needs to live a purposeful life? We have a long ways to go. But I think, we have an enormous opportunity here with this population that have shown character, have figured out a way to move forward, right? And we got to invest. We got to double down on that now.
Excellent. I'm going to move next to to Mark. So Mark, I have heard Portland State University referred to as the University of Social Mobility, and I think that is true for our 4-year institutions in this state. PCC I think of as the College of Social Mobility. Would you speak for a few minutes about programs that have been successful at PCC, programs that ensure that the students who get into school stay in school?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Jaime's comments, though, did remind me of the possibility in the future of Jaime's daughter becoming part of that first generation of no single racial majority, but also perhaps the last generation to have driver's ed. The landscape is changing so quickly and we need to change with it in order to help our students to access the kinds of opportunities that are going to be there. So some of the things PCC has been working on, one is called Guided Pathways, and this is to create a more coherent set of pathways for students and to link those to either transfer, like to PSU, or into the workforce. And when we think about the workforce, we also have to think about the barriers that our students have in order to complete. Because of the historic intersections between racism and poverty, poverty in our nation, also in Oregon, we see students of color disproportionately represented among those facing housing and food insecurity during college. When I was teaching, I could look out at my class and this student was living in a bus, this student was living in a car, and these students were couch surfing. Every year, unfortunately, it was the same. We'd hold, clothing drives, food drives, and diaper drives for the parents, but it was overwhelming. The need was too great. And fast forward to a few years later, and the Hope Center at Temple University did the first national studies of basic needs and security among college students and found an astonishing number. 60% of respondents indicated they experienced either housing or food insecurity. Again, Black and brown students were disproportionately represented. At Portland Community College, 19% of respondents indicated an experience with houselessness within 6 months of the survey. It's really hard to focus on school and graduate where you're not sure where your next meal is coming from or where you're going to sleep. So part of opening the door to opportunity has been to help students to access benefits programs and support resources so they can focus on school. So a few years ago, Portland Community College started something called Pathways to Opportunity. We created a proposal, sent it to the Oregon President's Council, Oregon Community College Association, and created a community of practice. It became a bill, HB, I think, 4340. The legislators in this room supported that bill, and we developed a report and sent it to the legislature indicating we needed benefits navigators. I don't know if anybody here has applied for food stamps, SNAP, or TANF, or filled out the FAFSA, but it's not easy and it's very confusing. And so there was nobody in that space. Yet each of the agencies, like DHS, were very good at their benefits, but we needed someone to bring them all together. And so we partnered with the Department of Human Services. Dan Hahn in Self-Sufficiency was a fantastic partner. He is not a typical bureaucrat, and really partnered with all 17 community colleges to create Pathways to Opportunity. That became a bill, HB 2835, which passed in the last session. Again, thanks to our legislators. We now have benefits navigators in every college campus.
Awesome.
Whether it's a community college or university. Future Connect, another example, we provide coaching and mentoring. It has doubled our graduation rates. And Career Pathways. Career Pathways is kind of an ecosystem approach to improving student success. It acknowledges the real lives of students. Time is money, and our students don't have much of either. Not a lot of time, not much money. And what Career Pathways does is it takes short-term training, stackable credentials. So somebody can come in, get a 6-month welding cert, go out, make more money, come back, get another welding certificate that adds up to an associate's degree, go out, make more money, come back. And they add on instead of making students start all over again. Wraparound supports like benefits and coaching, as well as integrated education and training. And this is an approach where students for English for speakers of other languages, that instruction is embedded within, let's say, phlebotomy or welding. And studies show students pick up English faster, they pick up welding faster as well, and employers get bilingual employees at the end and career, living wage jobs in a career pathway. And then finally, those close linkages with employers. Folks in this room, many of whom have relationships with PCC, other community colleges, let us know what we need to be teaching, what kinds of jobs are available, and then we go out and do that. Students then get jobs. So 2 of our cohorts, one in health professions and one in welding, have, when I last checked, a completion rate of 88%. And for students of color, it's 90%.
Awesome.
We can bridge the opportunity gap, we can bridge the equity gap, and we can bridge the skills gap. But approaches like career pathways are severely underfunded, as Ben noted. So there are things that work, they do cost, but there are more equitable outcomes for students and for society. One thing I just wanted to leave you with, our economic impact studies show that for every dollar students invest in their own education at PCC, they get a $3.20 return in lifetime increases in wages. Society as a whole gets $8.20 return in reduced social costs and increased wages, increased tax base. This is not a wasted investment. This is not a handout. This is an investment with a significant return for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. So the Career Pathways program, your comment about that just reminded me, of course, of reminding everyone in the room who knows higher education is not about just 4 years after college. Higher education is lifelong learning. Patsy, can you give us a couple of comments or examples about your work in workforce training and stackable certificates?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And things like that.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about the work that we do at Rise Partnership. I am the director of Long-Term Care Works, and we were able to create and implement the first apprenticeship in CNA apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship in the state, and we built it so unique. We wanted to remove the barriers to help people to enter this workforce, and with the pandemic, we're still not out of it. We're in the middle of it. We wanted to ensure that people transition into this workforce successfully. So I like to build things really simple. So it's about recruitment, retention, continuous improvement. How do we recruit people into this workforce? How do we retain them? And how do we continuously improve? Gone are the days of putting things in place and saying, oh, well, we need to go back and make sure these things are working for the individuals that we're helping transition into this workplace. And then for myself, I know there's barriers to employment. So what are the barriers? We've talked about childcare. What about transportation? Look at this workforce. Healthcare, you're telling them to wear scrubs. Who's going to buy the scrubs? Who's going to buy the scrubs? And then for our program, this is the first program that we're going to put the didactic, we've put the didactic completely online. How are they going to access the online program? So we provide tablets for them. So we're removing all of the barriers to employment to help them transition successfully. Not only that, what we're really excited about is each of our apprentices are connected to a career coach. There's a CNA too that actually go and help them transition into the workforce successfully. They job shadow. They go and help them, like, let's take the work from theory to practice. They go on site and with the OJT portion of the work, because what's happening right now with the job shortages, who's going to show them how to do what they need to do if it's a job shortage? They're tired, right? So guess what? These career coaches go into the workforce and show them what to do because they're CNA2s. And so we've seen such a success with that. So what I'm saying here is this is such a model where we've actually heard California right now has duplicated this model. I'm getting calls from other states to duplicate this model. Registered apprenticeships work. Do you want to know why? Because we're a labor management partnership. The employer has a stake in this. The employee has a stake in this, right? Because the employee wants a sustainable wage. The employer wants this to work because what? They have a product that they want to provide to our consumers. Gone are the days where education is saying, we're going to provide this education independent of employers, right? Because things are changing in the workforce that the educators need to know about. So they cannot be independent, they have to be interdependent. So this labor management partnership has really been successful for us because as things change, we're moving together through collaboration. And I really, really am passionate about this work because I see the win-win.
Awesome. I had told Duncan in the beginning that we weren't going to have enough time up here, and I am proven right. Andrew, we are going to close with you. One last question. The Oregon Business Plan calls out the need for better employer education connection, and a lot of that happens through industry, and a lot of that happens through entrepreneurship, which is your piece of the pie. Can you comment about what's been successful at the PAPE program and how things are going at U of O?
Yes,
in
absolutely.
Making those industry connections?
It will echo many of the things that we heard from other panelists, the importance of listening to industry, of authentically engaging with our partners outside the university. Let me highlight just one of our programs. The Night Campus Graduate Internship Program, we offer 5 different master's programs. Each of those was developed because Oregon industry came to the university and said, we need more people trained in polymers. We need more people trained in molecular probes. We need more people trained in the semiconductor industry. And we said, okay, what do you want them to learn? And they helped us develop the curriculum. Then we turned to industry and said, we'd like an internship to be part of this program. Will you provide an internship for students who participate in this new program if we set it up? Overwhelmingly, our industry partners say yes, because they know that this is a program which is meeting their needs. Our students enter this program, we have a 97% placement rate, because students know that they come in, they know they're being trained in skills that Oregon industry has said that it needs. Because it's a paid internship, they also leave debt-free. And because of that feature, as well as some other programs we've put in place around diversity, equity, and inclusion, we also have 60% of our students are women and underrepresented minorities, which in STEM is frankly unheard of. In fact, we run the largest master's program in physics in the country. But my point in this story is everything you're hearing from all of us is consistent. We have to listen better. We have to engage better. We have to partner better. And for me, at least, it's just so inspirational to share the stage with the 3 of you, because I know I have a lot to learn. Thank you.
Great. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you for listening.